It's interesting. This slick little video was released by the Chinese in December, 1 month after coronavirus cases began popping up. It specifically shows a researcher from the Wuhan Center for Disease Prevention and Control collecting samples from horseshoe bats. So again, not saying the coronavirus was an engineered bioweapon. The facts show that the Chinese had been collecting samples for this for a while. How is that a conspiracy? It's right there in their own state-approved media. In February, 2 researchers from the South China University of Technology published a paper that was immediately taken down. Gee, I wonder why. Let's take a look at their credentials. Their resume looks pretty darn impressive. Joint International Research Laboratory, South China University of Technology, Hazong University of Science and Technology, Wuhan University of Science and Technology. I mean, they're not slouches. They're not exactly a couple of internet bloggers in their mommy's basement. Well, maybe they didn't have a big-name supporter. Maybe they just went rogue. But it says here they actually had the support of the National Natural Science Foundation of China. Okay, so why did this get pulled? Well, it's easy. Their scientific data went to counter the propaganda. It was a question the Communist Party didn't want to be asked. Their report detailed that not one single horseshoe bat was sold at the Wuhan animal market. Let me quote, according to municipal reports and the testimonies of 31 residents and 28 visitors, the bat was never a food source in the city, and no bat was traded in the market. In fact, the bats responsible for carrying the coronavirus come from an area over 550 miles away from the animal market. So if the bats aren't from that area, and there weren't any of them being sold in the market, where did the outbreak come from? Because the data, which now comes from multiple sources, isn't supporting the Wuhan animal market. The 2 researchers screened the area, and they found 2 locations near the market where both were known to be studying coronavirus. One of them is only 300 yards away from the market. That's the length of 3 football fields. So that sounds like a good possibility. What's the location? The Wuhan Center for Disease Control and Prevention. The same exact place the researcher was gathering up horseshoe bats in the video. That's where they worked. Now, at this point, it seems pretty obvious, but the researchers sum up their conclusions here. Quote, in summary, someone was entangled with the evolution of the 2019 COVID coronavirus, and in addition to origins of natural recombination and intermediate host, the killer corona probably originated from a laboratory in Wuhan. End quote. This is the Chinese scientists saying this, but it's a conspiracy theory to point it out. It's politically incorrect somehow or another to broadcast that on national U.S. television. Richard Albright, who's a molecular biologist who's been quoted by coronavirus expert, both Washington Post and MSNBC, recently told the Daily Caller that it is very possible the virus could have been caused by a leak from a lab in Wuhan. Now, these are not conspiracy theories. These are conspiracy facts. So why is it so hard for the media to question all of this? I mean, there's already precedents for this sort of thing happening in China. It's already happened twice. Well, we found this article back from 2004, which came out after the last outbreak of SARS. There were 8 confirmed cases and hundreds that had to be quarantined. 2 separate incidents caused the brief outbreak. Both came from researchers working on SARS at a lab in Beijing who accidentally caught the virus and leaked it outside of the facility. This is just business as usual in China. It's happened in the past, and it appears that's what probably happened this time as well. The big difference this time, however, is that in the past, we could trust our media to report the truth. Now they only report what the Chinese Communist Party wants them to. in an animal market at Wuhan. It's a good scapegoat, or scapebat as the case may be, but the government control their people. But they cannot be responsible for Mother Nature, can they? It was bat soup. I pointed out back in February that researchers were beginning to doubt this narrative. The highly respected medical journal, The Lancet, published their findings after studying all the confirmed coronavirus cases at the time. Well, they were disturbed by where the outbreak began, and they stated, and I quote, "The symptom onset date of the first patient identified was December 1st, 2019. None of his family members developed fever or any respiratory symptoms. No epidemiological link was found between the first patient and later cases." In other words, they don't have any idea where the virus came from, but it didn't come from the animal market. I also pointed out back in February something else, that Wuhan is the only place in China that has a Bio-Level 4 lab that studies these kinds of viruses. We even warned China 2 years ago that it wasn't a good spot for that kind of a lab. Now, here's where the Chinese propaganda comes into play. If you pose this question or point out this little fact, you're instantly branded a conspiracy theorist. Not just in China, but all over the world. Experts have already said that this virus is not engineered. But I didn't say it was. What if the coronavirus was collected from a bat and then taken to this lab for study? Is there any evidence at all that researchers from Wuhan have been collecting bats, specifically the horseshoe bat, because it might be worth looking into?
蝙蝠的生活环境都在人迹罕至的洞穴里，但只有这样的环境，才能找到最理想的病毒媒介样本。最安全了，这里的蝙蝠它主要是菊毒蝠和佛衣蝠。如果说我们的皮肤裸露，很容易接触到蝙蝠的这些无害物体，所以说这个风险就。
It's interesting. This slick little video was released by the Chinese in December, 1 month after coronavirus cases began popping up. It specifically shows a researcher from the Wuhan Center for Disease Prevention and Control collecting samples from horseshoe bats. So again, not saying the coronavirus was an engineered bioweapon. The facts show that the Chinese had been collecting samples for this for a while. How is that a conspiracy? It's right there in their own state-approved media.